So there's been a little delay since the last video went up. I apologize for that. I've just been really busy with projects. I have been filming a bunch of stuff, so I haven't got them all edited together yet, but there's a backlog of videos that can probably start going up pretty quickly, and hopefully I'll get up a bunch of videos in the next couple weeks. I am going out of town the next couple weekends, but I'll do my best to start getting stuff back up on the blog. Again, thanks for watching, and hope you enjoyed this second part of the radial arm saw. All right, well, hi there. So this is the second part to that radial arm saw series, and in this video we're going to finish kind of stripping it all down and start to reassemble it after we kind of lubricate all the parts up and get everything cleaned up. I did lose a few video clips as I started the reassembly process, but I don't think you missed too much information. I walk through at a later point in the video and kind of show you how all the various mechanisms on the saw work and how things are kind of put together. Again, I don't expect most of you watching this are ever going to be, stripping down a radial arm saw and reassembling it, but maybe you are. And again, it just sort of shows you, though, the video just kind of, again, how to go about a project, how to keep track of things, taking them off and labeling, taking pictures when you need to, figuring out which parts need sort of attention or lubricating or fixing or replacing. I hope you'll get some of that out of this video. And then just sort of basically how a radial arm saw is put together, you'll kind of get to see that. Also some handy techniques for just how to deal with rust and grime and yeah, so let's start watching. And what I've decided to do in this one is, since a lot of the videos speeded up, there's kind of a loud, annoying buzz with the street noise and things, so I'll just do a little voiceover for the various segments of the video, and I hope you enjoy it. All right, so here I am just taking more stuff apart. What I'm working on here is the track that actually gets bolted to the underside of that radial arm. And what I've got in my hands here is the mount mechanism for the motor, and that slides along that track there to bring the saw kind of back and forward. That needs some attention, as you'll see a little bit later. Here I'm working on the miter lock mechanism and just cleaning that up a little bit. That wasn't really having too much of a problem. Oh, and there's a nice little hole in my work shirt. Yeah, you get a nice couple of views of my armpit there. Here I'm just labeling up the other two wire terminals and pulling those through to help free up the miter lock mechanism. And then, I spend about the next 5 minutes here just trying to figure out if I need to take off that radial arm in order to get the miter lock mechanism out. And the answer is I do need to take it off. But that doesn't stop me from sort of pulling and bending and twisting. Not enough that it's going to damage the mechanism, but I am fidgeting with it quite a bit here that I don't really need to be doing. Taking off the radial arm was no big deal. I don't know why I was really trying to avoid it. Here I'm just starting to loosen up the nuts that will take that radial arm off. And it was pretty easy to do. And here, yeah, you see me waving to my in-laws who are about to show up. So I found this radial arm saw on Craigslist for a steal.
So of course you had to get it.
Needed a little work.
So why are you photographing?
In case anybody's interested in how to strip down a radial arm saw, lubricate it all up and put it back together.
What is it?
A radial arm saw.
In case Jumper or Hashna someday need to do that.
What's that?
In case Jumper or Hashna need to do it someday. Wow, it's nice. We read the weather. It said the low is 37, the high was 72.
And just at night for those lows.
It really does get crisp at night, huh?
Yeah. Yeah, big swings around here. So here you can see some of the progress we made. We took off that radial arm and the mitering mechanism. You can see some of the parts down here. I think what I wanted to point out is I just want you to notice how whenever I take something out, I leave the screws in with the part as much as possible. These just held on this case back here, and that way I don't lose anything. Here's the motor with the casing taken off, and better focus here. It moves pretty freely. I might put a couple drops of oil on the crank end out here, but that's in pretty good shape. Here's two of the parts I kind of noticed were broken when I bought it. This handle is supposed to be kind of a little flip handle, but someone did actually a decent repair job bolting in this other handle, and that works pretty well, but I'll see if I can get a replacement part from Sears. This is the other part I noticed was broken. This goes on the radial arm, and it clips on. It's just a little indicator line so you know how much distance your saw has traveled, and it's supposed to clip on with a little plastic clip like this one from the other side, and I'll see if I can get a replacement part for that as well. It had been glued on, and it would probably stay okay if I glued it back. This is the let me get it right. This is the beveling mechanism, and I think I showed you that before. It's got some spots for a little pin to click into. And here I just wanted to show you, this is what really needs to get cleaned up. This was the source of a lot of the problems. And what this is this holds the saw, and it rides on this track here. And it is pretty sticky. So what we need to do, these bearings seem to roll okay, but these are totally gummed up. So we'll take those apart and clean those up. Just dust off the sawdust a little bit before we put it back together. Put a little grease on any sort of metal to metal contact, and that should have it working pretty well. So we'll mount the camera back up now, and I'll continue to fiddle around, and we'll speed up the process a little bit on film so it's not quite so boring. So here I'm just using my compressor to dust off the interior of that motor. I'd done a little bit of that before I started filming. And again, just using the compressor to kind of blow off some dust. You see my daughter Hashna flying by there on her little Razor scooter, occasionally stopping to check out what I'm doing. So that's Hashna. Her twin sister is Jumpa, and that's who my in-laws were referring to when they first showed up. Here I'm just that motor mount. I'm just sort of taking the bearings off, using some WD-40 to get the gummed up grease out of the bearings themselves. That's a little surgical towel. One perk of being a surgeon is I get to bring those home and use them for shop rags. I think one of the clips that got lost was me re-greasing those bearings, and it's pretty simple. You just shove some grease into the casing. You can't do that on a sealed bearing, but then sealed bearings tend to get quite as gummed up as the ones where the dust can kind of get in there. Here I'm using WD-40 and 600 grit wet dry sandpaper to take the rust off. This is a real nice trick. It works really slick. You'll see, all that rust just kind of come right off as soon as I wipe it off with the rag there, and just sort of shines everything up, makes it look pretty. And any sort of solvent, light lubricant will do that. Nothing really special about WD-40. Here I'm turning my attention to this blade elevation mechanism, and I had said earlier in the video that somebody did a decent repair job on the handle, but not really. The nut that they used just kept loosening up, and it just wasn't working great. You'll see my solution to that a little later. But here I'm actually having to grab onto the outside of it rather than using the crank to get the blade, get that riser up a little bit to clean it off a little more. Here's where things are already going back together here. I lost some video clips. Basically, I thought my camera was running and it just wasn't. All that I've really done is put that radial arm back on. And here I'm rerouting the wires and hooking up the switch again. And, I did label the terminals so I knew what would go where. And just sort of screwing that in. Sorry, not the switch, but the casing for the switch. And now I am looking for the ground screw that I misplaced temporarily. It showed up eventually. I figured it would, so I just turned my attention to reassembling the casing for the miter lock here. So I figured I'd just give you a quick little update here on how things have been going. You can see it's all kind of mostly back together. And the blade elevation mechanism is working pretty well, although that's the replacement part I need to get. We can kind of make it work with a socket right now. And there's the blade mechanism all back together. And you can see I've greased it all up, so it's a very nice action now. And by just taking things apart and cleaning them, now I've managed to, let me get this mounted over here. I'm going to pause it for a second. So here's just another quick sort of introduction to this saw. As long as we've still got a lot of the casings off, I thought I'd just show you how the bevel mechanism actually works. So you've got this pin here that is set to insert into a little plate back here behind, and as you move the bevel lock over, it engages that bar and pulls the plate out to allow you to then bevel, and it's tricky to do with one hand. And then as it gets to the 90 degree, that pin re-engages, and as you pull that bar, it actually tightens against that nut right there, and that's what allows the bevel to lock in. And as far as the ripping, again, there's a nut right here and a pin right here, and as you pull the lever over, this bar swings over and engages that to pull that pin out, and then that allows you with two hands to swivel the saw into a ripping position. The blade elevation works as you turn that hand crank in the front. There's a gear here and a gear here, and that swivels this threaded rod into a nut that's attached at the bottom of this lever arm. And the miter gauge works. When the miter's locked, this ring here clamps down against this bar, and when it's disengaged, this loosens up. And then there's also a couple of pins in there to lock it into 90, 45 either direction.